So today I'm joined by Anish Gawande and Rohin Bhatt, who both of them are pioneers in their own field and paving way for the future of LGBTQI plus members of India. So Anish and Rohin, how are you today? And happy Pride.
Happy Pride, happy Pride.
Right?
How are we
was
today?
it?
How are you today, Rohan?
I'm quite fine. How are you?
Are you quite fine? I'm doing splendidly. This is Delhi winter, which is not doing very well for either my skin or my hair,
It is
or the mornings that I live in. But
The
we're here.
Gujarati in me wants to just run back home.
Yes, it is extremely cold, but I hope the tea is doing you good. So, how was Pride?
It was something. Quite fun. But I think a few things that stood out for me was the heavily armed police presence.
Really?
Yes, I think there were a lot of police people there.
Which was very surprising.
Very
This whole
surprising.
battalion and
Heavily
contingent.
armed In,
Yeah.
in which everybody had a danda.
During a celebration?
Yes, and as soon as the clock struck 5, people were being thrown out of Jantar Mantar.
What?
Yeah.
Yes, literally.
And who mandated that?
The Delhi police, the central government,
I don't know.
but it was quite entertaining because it was very different. I don't know if you've been to Bombay Pride, but Bombay Pride is very different because it goes through a very dense, congested area of the city. And it's also given very little police presence at all. So everyone is just doing whatever they
Why
want.
do you think there's so much difference?
I have no clue, but if I were to hazard a guess, I would say that things which have happened at Bombay Pride have kind of pushed the wrong buttons in the powers that be, and that has might have led to. And again, I'm just
What happened at Bombay Pride?
There was a case that happened at Bombay Pride where there were sedition charges filed against a young queer person, right? And
What were
that
the
led
grounds of that
to,
sedition? Because
contentious grounds, yeah. It was some sloganeering. It was honestly a lot of misunderstanding and
isn't
misinterpretation.
that what our sedition laws are all about?
thankfully the sedition law has been kept in abeyance now. Now they've found a different way to do it, and that is the PMLA.
Correct. But also UAPA, they managed to put a fair bit of people under UAPA
Yes.
charges behind bars as well.
And do you think there's going to be any change to that? Because
Well-
that is a tool in the hands of our courts and government and police, and they've been harassing all the wrong people for it.
I can't speak about specific cases, but yes, the UAPA is a draconian law. But I think what happens with the PMLA is far more sinister in that every time there's a PMLA crime, the ECIR, which is the Economic Crime Information Report, is not handed over to the accused. The bail provisions have become extremely hard, and after Justice Khanwilkar's judgment in last year, which is now under review, this has been given sanction by no less than the top court of the country, and I think that does not bode well for fundamental rights which the Constitution guarantees.
Yeah, no, I think it's also a question of what are the mechanisms that are being used now to sort of stifle dissent in many ways. I think it's not unique to this government. It's not unique to this dispensation. It's been done in the past. It's been done by previous governments. Stifling of any form of dissent in this country is a tale as old as time. But I think you're seeing very new ways, right? Earlier you had, for example, sedition, you had the income tax, now you've got sort of PMLA, you've now got the Narcotics Control Bureau becoming a sort of empowered body which nobody had heard of until as little as 2 years ago. So you're seeing various ways in which there are new methods that are being introduced to stifle dissent, which again, of course, doesn't bode well for democracy. But I think it's on that trajectory of of finding ways and means to sort of criminalize, penalize, and punish. But what's interesting to me, at least, is that the government still finds the need, right, to legitimize this and still do it within the framework of the law. There's nothing stopping a government in India today, particularly given the amount of sort of popularity that the current dispensation enjoys, from going completely outside the rule book.
Because don't you think that the majority of our general population is in favor of stifling those voices?
But I would say the majority of the population is not particularly enamored by or critically appreciative of like due process, right? I think a great example is, what happened in Delhi recently, right? I'm going to trigger warning because obviously this was an alleged case of also sexual assault, where there was this young woman on the 1st of January who got dragged for so many like kilometers, right?
13 kilometers.
13 kilometers. I mean, in the aftermath of that, just like in the aftermath of the Nirbhaya case, you have widespread demands for mob justice, right? Nobody is saying these people should go to a court of law and they should go through the process and they should be tried. Right now, it's like hang them tomorrow. So
It's not going to happen.
but it's not. But interestingly, the government is not leaning into it, no?
And why do you think that is?
I disagree with Anish here. I think while they may be following the spirit of the law, the letter of the law, they are far from following the spirit of the law. And look at it in terms of the way Siddiq Kapan has been harassed, or way Tista Setalwad has been harassed. Whatever is happening well within the contours of the black letter of the law. But what you are seeing is a flagrant violation of the due process day in and day out. And the courts have, to a great extent, in my opinion, kind of condoned it. Of course, they have at times also condemned it, but the rare cases where it has been condoned, I think, should find no place in democracy. And Anish was talking about the Delhi case. I think, that speaks to a broader idea about where we are headed to as a society, in that our social fabric is constantly being eviscerated day in and day out, and everything now becomes this communal issue. Every suicide that happens in Bollywood is now a chance for the powers that be to turn it into a case. Now, with the latest suicide, it has become love jihad. With Sushant Singh, it was the trope of the evil girlfriend. And so, I think what is happening might be well within the law, but it does not happen within the spirit of these laws, as well as does not hold true for a democratic society, and these things shouldn't be happening in a democratic society.
So, would you like to describe exactly what it is that you're working towards today, right now?
Rohin is working on too many things. What are you working on, Rohin?
I can't speak about the specifics,
But you are working on a team which is on its way to hopefully achieving and legalizing gay marriage.
yes, I am a part of that. But speaking broadly, though, and not going into specifics of the cases, that I'm the part of a wider legal team. I am in the middle of hoping to make judicial, legal, and healthcare spaces more inclusive for queer people. That's what most of my work has been focusing on, helping queer people across the country navigate the legal system, and that ranges everything from, helping people get out of abusive homes, getting FIRs of kidnapping quashed against their lovers by their parents, and all sorts of things, of course.
And Anish,
Wearing a couple of hats right now, but one of them
very
is
impressive hats.
no,
Always.
hardly.
He is the Anish Gawande
Anish
of
Please,
India.
please.
Tell
That
us
is
everything about
far too
yourself.
kind. Tell you everything that's going to take a while. I kid.
We have
but
enough time.
we have enough time. No, but I think right now it's been a fun time being back. I think the main hat I used to wear was sort of electoral politics. I was mainly working on election campaigns, and which is where
When you came back from uni?
when I came back from university, right? So I was back in 2018 running election campaigns, doing sort of work that wasn't especially related to or linked to queer rights at all, but it was very much the fact that I was a queer person on the campaign trail that inspired a lot of the work that came later, which is work that sits at the intersection of queerness, politics, and technology, right? So with Pink List India, which is the organization that I started with two others in 2019, we document and track every single MP and their stance in LGBTQ+ issues
Wow.
in a way that anyone can access. And so now the idea is to get all of these MPs in one room
And hold them accountable.
and hold them accountable, and then also provide a platform for grassroots activists to get in touch with them.
And do you think that a lot of successes have come about?
You know, we've got a list of 161 MPs in the Lok Sabha who've spoken on LGBTQ plus issues, the good, bad, and the ugly. Out of that, you've got 115 who've been vocally supportive of LGBTQ plus rights in varying degrees, varying capacities, not all unproblematically or uncritically, right? And so you've got a sizable number who have waded into the conversation around queerness, around equality, that need to now be sort of shepherded in the right direction. And also exposed to what the problems are on the ground today.
So what are the problems today?
I mean, of course, I think there's more than I can enumerate just on my own, but I think the key priority is that at least we've been focusing on are three, right? One is the need for a comprehensive anti-discrimination law. That today, in a country like India, where you have increasing instances of discrimination and in many cases also violence against members of the LGBTQ plus community, and in crimes that can be very easily classified as hate crimes, we don't have any measures to protect the queer community from discrimination in jobs, in education, on the streets. So I think anti-discrimination is a big chunk. I think the second thing is broader problems with the Transgender Persons Protection of Rights Act, right, which is a piece of legislation passed in 2019 that was opposed by the trans community, which has provisions that are deeply unsettling and require sort of reform through the legislative process. And the third thing is action against conversion therapy, which continues to be an incredibly large challenge in a country like India, both in its secular and religious form. And it's a practice that's, and Rohin can of course speak more on this, it's been outlawed by the courts. You've seen sort of action being taken from your sort of national medical commission, and it's gone off to the state medical commissions. But there needs to be some framework with which you can use the letter of the law and see it implemented. So these, I think, for me, are the three priorities. There's hundreds of more issues, of course. But I think the
policy-wise, these are the ones which...
Policy-wise, these, and they range they range across the spectrum, right? In that one is legislative action, which is new legislation that needs to be created. The other is sort of problems with existing legislation. And the third is, with the conversion therapy bit, it's implementation of existing judgments.
So in healthcare, basically, the Supreme Court said that anyone with a uterus can access abortion. Right.
And, while that holds true, and that definitely is a broader issue with expanding the jurisprudence which comes from the Supreme Court, I think what matters is how well it percolates down to the grassroots primary healthcare centers. There, I think we will still find access to abortion being a major issue. But what this judgment has done commendably is expanded the jurisprudence in a liberal framework to include the range of gender identities that might encapsulate people with uteri.
It is wonderful that the courts are taking such stances, but what my question is, okay, the court comes up with a statement or a judgment, but then how does it trickle down to those nurses and those doctors who would actually be then performing those procedures? Is anything being done to sensitize those areas?
Yes and no. Yes, because there are a bunch of people working on it, and they've been doing some fantastic work. Sangat, an organization in Bhopal, is one of them. Dr. Aksa Sheikh, who's one of India's foremost transgender doctor, is another person who's been working extremely hard to get rid of queerphobia in medicine. And, there are doctors around the country who are doing it, and we only know of some of them. We don't know a lot of them. There were a lot of people who kind of petitioned who were involved with the Madras High Court, a lot of queer doctors who were a part of the proceedings of the Madras High Court. And so things are changing. Things won't change overnight. But what we require is, I think, a systematic overhaul of how medicine is taught in India and around the world. And this is not an India specific problem. I've been speaking to a lot of people who kind of teach reproduction and reproductive ethics around the world. And this framing of reproduction still is between a man and a woman, right? A biological man and a biological woman. So this is not an India specific problem, but the rate at which things are changing in India is, I think, far slower than the rate at which they are changing around the world.
Mm-hmm. And the police, are they sensitive enough to these issues? And so, like, okay, for example, there is a couple belonging to the LGBTQ plus community, and they're walking on the streets with their hands, or like they're embracing each other. Do you think there is still in metropolitan cities this fear amongst those communities that there would be some form of moral policing, or like somebody might just come and like harm them physically, mentally?
Oh, it's happened to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, coming from where I am, from an extremely position of an extreme privilege, I think if it can happen to me, I think, and it is the lived reality of thousands of trans people who are on the streets begging and doing sex work on account of non-availability of jobs. So I think, when you are a queer person living in India, you make peace, I guess, with being called slurs when you walk on the road, or at the receiving end of police brutality.
And Anish?
So, I think, one, I definitely agree with this, right? But again,
have you experienced anything like that?
I honestly, not really, because I think primarily, one, I grew up in Bombay, which is, I think, starkly different from most cities across the country. And two, I haven't really been here very long, right? I think most of my work was on the campaign field. I wouldn't dare to kiss somebody, like queer or otherwise, over the course of my work there. And then I've been shuttling in and out. But to give you an example, I could greet my partner with a peck on their lips in a cafe in Bombay. But would I do that on the streets? Not really.
Would you do it at a cafe in Delhi?
Would I do it at a cafe in Delhi? Is a very interesting question. I've never really gotten to that. So if anyone's listening to this podcast and wants to greet me with a peck on my lips at a cafe in Delhi, I'm very welcome to the idea and the suggestion.
Anish, one day at your nearest cafe.
At your nearest cafe.
Dating app.
I love.
There's a very popular Thursday night.
No.
happens
They
in
must
Delhi.
not. They must not take me to some popular Thursday night. I would like to go to Trey at Lodi. Thank you very much. They have nice wine there. But no, I think the reality is that, like, even in a city like Bombay, right, you're not going to make out with your partner regardless of whether you're queer or not
That's an
on the
Indian
streets.
issue, I guess.
That's an Indian issue, right? I think, and that's in a city like Bombay. And I think if you're dating across caste, if you're dating across religion, if you're dating in any sort of framework that's not sort of acceptable within the broader purview of society, these are not luxuries, quote unquote, that you enjoy. The bigger problem, though, I think, is that when you go one step beyond, right? So what happens when a queer couple decides to get married?
Or what happens when they even, okay, so now the court has said that they can live in together and they'll be treated as almost as married, right? But can they actually adopt?
No, they can't. But I think even when they live in together, what happens when the parents of one of the partners comes in with their entire family and tries to take one of the couples away? One sort of person away.
What happens?
Right? What happens is we clearly don't have any sort of mechanism in place to ensure that there is justice for the couple that's seeking to live their own lives on their own terms.
And I think courts have also kind of become tools for oppression in that, because, and Ruth Juanita has written on this, about how habeas corpus petitions are weaponized against queer couples. I think, if I'm not wrong, it's been a while since I read that paper, but I think she talks about how they're used for lesbian women specifically. But often and I've seen it with a few of the people that I've been helping out, that filing FIRs for kidnapping or filing a habeas corpus petition to ensure that, the person's available on court premises, and then you can do whatever you want, get a few goons and kidnap them off. And I think this is also further complicated when you cross intersectionalities, right? Intercaste, interfaith relationships. Maharashtra, for example, recently said that they will investigate whatever that means. Every interfaith and intercaste relationship, of course, after massive protests, they dropped the intercaste relationship, but they are still planning to investigate interfaith relationships. What does that investigation mean? And when you kind of combine that with the collective trauma that queer people face through when they go navigate the legal system and the policing systems, I think it becomes 1,000 times, if not more, horrendous.
Yeah, and I think this is a broader component, right? I think the censoring, the sort of attack on queer bodies is a part of a larger problem of the government entering our bedrooms.
So do you think there are closeted couples in the government?
Are there closeted couples in the government? How many of them do you want me to name?
Oh, so there are, huh?
No, I think in many ways, right? I think, for example, we don't have a single out queer parliamentarian. Right?
Well,
We've never had one.
Run my campaign.
You can become
Acha,
one.
nee, please, calm down, guys.
He'll run my campaign.
He will.
I'll run
eventually.
all of your campaigns. I'm very happy to do that. But the point is, we don't have anyone out in parliament.
Yeah.
Which is, of course, not to say that there hasn't been anyone queer and in parliament. Right?
Do you think that the vote bank, the people, would they actually come out and vote for such a person?
I don't think that it's reached a stage where it even gets factored into the conversation. So this is a lot of the work that we do at Pinklist, right? The idea is to document what is going on the macro scale around queerness in politics right now. It is harder today to be a sort of Dalit person in politics than it is to be a queer person in politics. Wow. Right? It is harder today to be a Muslim person in politics than it is to be a queer person in politics. And that's not to say that queer phobia doesn't exist. It's simply that queerness is not visible enough for it to become something that people are actively sort of engaging with, right? Because we don't have enough queer people who've come out in a way that queerness becomes something real for most people across this country.
So you think these pride parades and celebrations, so what exactly is going to make a difference?
It's just a question of time also. I'll give you an example. Bombay's been having a pride for almost more than a decade now. Until I came back and started working with Parmesh Shahani, who used to run the India Culture Lab, I'd never met a queer person before. And I grew up in the heart of urban India, right?
Yeah.
And so it's queerness is present. And yes, we had 13,000 people at Delhi Pride. Amazing. Incredible. But a country of 1.3 billion people, finding 13,000 people at Delhi Pride is fabulous, but it's a drop in the ocean. So, it's a movement that's building up. And I think
imagine how people in rural India, or say like people who don't even know what it is that they are, how do they navigate their lives?
There's better than most of us in urban India sometimes.
Really?
So there's Maya Sharma has written a beautiful book called Loving Women, which is about sort of lesbian love across Gujarat. And it's a fantastic portrait of how queerness doesn't need to exist within the sort of confines of LGBTQI+, right? There are ways and means in which people have expressed their queerness, understood their queerness, and then lived their queer lives.
Can you explain more, because this is very interesting?
So there's a great example of someone who was in a queer relationship in a small town in Gujarat where their queerness was sort of sanctioned or allowed by the fact that they used to descend into a well and come out in a sort of quote-unquote male avatar to sleep with their female partner.
What?
And it was sort of coded in religion, right? It was coded in religion, it was coded in not exactly spirituality, but some form of supernatural element. And that's what gave it sanction. Now there were two women loving each other and they found some hack to make it work in their village.
So I have an interesting question. So now that our country is predominantly, I think more than the law and the rule of, and the word of the law, our scriptures are what are in the hearts and the minds of the people of this country. So you think that if enough work is done to say sanction homosexuality and other issues of LGBTQI plus. Do you think that if religion comes out and says that, okay, this is fine, the people would accept it, and then the government would accept it, it'll have to accept it?
What do you think, Rohin?
I have no clue.
You have no clue. This is a.
Because there is somebody in ISKCON actually. ISKCON is accepting it. I think if many Brahmin or people who believe in the Gita and teach the Gita, if they start coming out and telling people that this is fine, this is part of our heritage, this is part of our culture, do you think that, say, our grandfathers and some of the older generation who are so hell-bent on becoming teaching the scriptures to their younger generation, to our generation, would they actually be in support?
I think this is a difficult question on two fronts, right? One is there have been a lot of anti-caste activists who've questioned whether the idea of scriptural sanction or scriptural permission for queerness is actually compatible with queerness as a radical identity formation, right? So will the same sort of acceptance be extended to queer Dalits? Will the same sort of acceptance be extended to queer Muslims? Will the same sort of acceptance be extended to queer Adivasis within a framework of religious acceptance? I doubt it. I think the fight so long has been an argument, and Rohin can of course speak more with the anti-sodomy case against 377 as well, and with, in some ways, the Trans Act as well, has been an appeal to constitutional morality, right? We've said that we are a secular country governed by a constitution that enshrines within it certain values that we are bound together by as a nation. And those can be sometimes overlapping with religious values, but at other times can be completely distinct from those religious values, right? And I think focusing on those values set out of liberty, dignity, equality that have been sort of enshrined in a document that we gave unto ourselves is a far more profound way of achieving these rights. Yeah. Because even in the case, because of course this stemmed from the conversation we had about Gujarat, remember that it was not scriptural sanction that allowed these two queer women to lead their lives, right? It was tradition that went beyond scripture. They were not coming with a book and saying, okay, chalo, this is read in a book. They were saying that they found some sort of way to code it correctly. Mm-hmm. And that's more societal norm rather than religious norm.
So, Anish Gawande, the heartbreaker of India.
1 second. 30 seconds ago, I was told I'm the heartbreaker of Delhi. Now I have become the heartbreaker of India. I am breaking no hearts. Can I please have some hearts to break?
And GK.
And GK.
And GK, please no.
With GK? Oh
I
God,
can't. No, not for any other reason. I have no snootiness.
I mean, you're such a charming young activist. So wherever you go, you must be breaking hearts.
But Hansika, tell us about the hearts you're breaking right now.
I am, officially the heartbroken of India.
Oh, I see.
Heartbroken of India, not the heartbreaker.
The conversations are starkly different from what they were 30 seconds ago.
We are talking about love, aren't we? It is all centered around love, isn't it? The policies around love.
Yes, the policy of the podcast, Hansika. I think the love is getting a little flustered. So we need to unpack.
We're unpacking you.
Unpacking your flustered face.
So share some funny incidents that must have happened when you were working as a politician, grassroots politician.
Grassroots? I was never a grassroots politician. The Congress party is...
But when you were in Congress, you must have experienced a lot of funny things.
I think it was a exciting time to be working in politics because I'd just come back from New York City. I had come back to work with Milind Dera in South Mumbai. And a week after I came back to Bombay, I was told that you will be working with the Maharashtra Congress for the first 6 months and touring the state as part of the Jan Sangharsh Yatra. So I was plonked and thrown into Ichalkaranji and Pathardi and the remotest corners of a state that I had never seen after New York City. As a flaming queer person, right? And I was like, I just don't have the wardrobe for this. This is what has emerged in response. It's like
But you did what?
skinny
You
white
have
pants, a
this
kurta
perfect-
that
But
like kind of.
this is quintessential Anish Gawande outfit.
It's been refined, right? And I think the funniest story I have is we're on this bus, right, that's going across the state. You've got like the top Congress leaders across the state in that bus.
And Anish.
4 former chief ministers, like all these former ministers, everyone is like in the biggest sort of campaign before the elections. And there's me. Everyone else is dressed in white kurta, white pajama, and terrible rubber flip-flops. Right? And I was like, this is not what political fashion needs. A serious conversation.
You know, Rosario and I were just talking about that, how much he needs to start styling the netas of India.
But I was just with the Bharat Jodo Yatra in its last day in Maharashtra, and I think for me, what needs a Vogue feature, but they'll never carry it, is that we have seen a revolution in political fashion with Rahul Gandhi's Bharat Jodo Yatra.
Oh my God.
Vogue editors, if
I
you're
think,
listening to
oh
it,
dear, Vogue editors must take note
if you are listening to it, you must do a cover of Rahul Gandhi.
of Rahul Gandhi, because imagine all of these politicians, everyone in their entourage is dressed head to toe in the same outfits that they used to wear, except of course Rahul, and then their shoes are all sneakers. For the first time in India, I think I just want to do like a shot of like the legs of the Bharat Jodo Yatra, right? It's like everyone is wearing sneakers, but nobody really knows what to do with sneakers.
Are you
They've
planning
never
to sell
worn
them
them
on like
before.
some OnlyFans or something? With
No,
foot
like it was.
fetish or
It's so
something?
funny. You have to
Oh
see.
my God.
I think it's
You
a.
cut this out of this.
Oh
please.
my
This is the OnlyFans is not going to happen in Indian politics. We're a while away. But think about it. People are wearing sneakers, but they don't know what color to wear. So you've got the most whack color. Someone's wearing green. Someone's wearing blue. After Rahul Gandhi started wearing Asics, the Asics stores in rural Maharashtra have sold out.
If you dress too well, right? Like, they're not going to take you seriously. They'll be like, okay, this person is too much of a fashionista.
But there's something.
What shoes are you wearing right now, Hansika?
I think I'm a disaster.
What are you wearing?
Acha, what are you
shoes?
wearing? Can we please see the footwear on the show? Acha. I think we must have better fashion in
Amen,
politics.
amen.
And my only contribution there is that at the end of this Jan Sangharsh Yatra, where I was with all of these politicians, the ones making the snidest remarks about the outfit I was wearing were asking for my tailor's number. So I'm just saying there's hope.
You know,
There is hope.
it took me 30 days for me to get Anish's tailor's number.
It's
out of
not
Anish.
something that I disclose very easily.
But he did. You know, that's how I knew I was part of Anish's circle. Is Anish gave
Yeah,
me
you
his
really-
number.
Tie to the Supreme Court?
Well, not in the court, but yes, I do wear it.
You
to
think
the
they should
office.
allow that?
Yes. I'm tired of wearing black and white.
Exactly, this brings
But
such a...
but there's something to be said. I don't want to give up on my gowns. It's such convenient to like just flap somebody who comes too close to you and like just make space for yourself. I use my gown for that.
Slap everyone.
I like sashay with my gowns into the court and people just tend to make space for me.
Lovely.
I think everyone in the Supreme Court looks like a penguin.
You look like a penguin.
I think, why is everyone wearing gowns?
Alright?
What should
It's
we
40 degrees Celsius.
You're mourning King John. Nish.
It's 40 degrees Celsius in the summer. I think we need to like calm down with the gowns. Or we need to
That
have.
is true. That is like a
I don't
big
think so.
colonial hangover that we have.
You know, as much as I'm for decolonization, I would say these gowns need to be clung on to for dear lives.
I think it should be optional.
Nah.
I think the Supreme Court should be clothing optional. This really should not make it any sort of public domain podcast, but you know, here we
It's
are.
interesting. I mean, it's honesty
Yeah.
and
No, I think.
But Hansika, we want some more honesty on your
Your
side.
part.
if anyone's interested in my life right now.
Well, people are going to listen to your podcast.
Perhaps in another 10 years.
Who is the one guest you would invite on this podcast who would be the one you have a big crush on? Not someone, and it doesn't need to be someone like, it's not, yeah, who is the one person you would invite? If you could have anyone in the world sit on this podcast with you, who would you have?
I just snorted. First time after middle school. I just snorted.
Clearly, we know you have someone on your mind.
Who is it?
I hardly have crushes.
Oh, please. Who are you kidding, Hansika?
But I think, you know, for example, for me right now it would be, I can't say this.
No,
but
say it.
No, I think right now, I would love to have Rahul Gandhi on a podcast.
Amen.
Can you imagine? Like, one, has revolutionized political
Yes.
fashion. Two, has just walked for 120 days, 28 kilometers a day. The man's fit.
The man's fit, but too old for me, man. Who are the good-looking
Like,
ones?
Who
at
was the
least- at least
guy?
you know these
I
boys.
think Kofi Annan was really hot.
Yes. Huh?
We're talking about someone from
No, but here's
the
the thing,
country,
right?
from the city right now, contemporary.
Our world is a village.
But here's the thing: the
How?
policy guys are better dressed than the politicians.
Well, please don't make me a policy guy. I am not a policy guy.
Oh, would you prefer? You just said you don't want to
I
be
am
a politician.
I am Aam Aadmi. If you're listening, Arvind Kejriwal,
He should take
I
some
would,
lead.
Yeah,
I
he
would,
should
I
take
would
some
really
fashion
enjoy.
advice.
No, I'm Arvind Kejriwal is great. I think Aam Aadmi aesthetic is perfect.
Yeah, now that he's given up that ugly muffler.
I think to answer your question, I think
No, but we must redo it.
Yeah, we should redo
Yeah.
that. We should redo the whole thing. Yeah.
Yeah. No, but okay. Pause.
what was that question?
Who would you have on the podcast?
No, who would you? You know, if you could have anyone sitting in our place right now, remove
Yeah.
a chair because want to be intimate. Who is the one person you'd like, who you have a crush on, to be on this podcast? It could be an intellectual crush also. The right answer is
Okay,
us.
nobody
us.
too old and nobody too young.
So us.
Yeah, so us.
Yes, but what
Thanks.
was your question?
Who would you like to have on the podcast? Who you have an intellectual crush on?
Intellectual crush.
Answers us.
I mean, I just have crushes, not intellectual
No.
crushes. I'm not.
Oof.
serious.
Oof! Like Harvard and Oxford doesn't get better than it does
There
it
is
now. If you're
Yale.
going to have
There is Yale as
Yale.
well. There is Yale as well. We
There's
must not
Yale as
forget
well.
the other top universities in the world.
Yes.
well, but you have the crimson and you have the blue.
Okay, I'd probably
Why
have
would you-
ornaments in there on this podcast.
Ooh.
Ooh!
I think we really need to edit that.
Yeah, you really need to edit that.
Anish, Rohin, I've had a blast talking to you guys. An absolute joy having you guys here. So, to end this podcast on a lovely note, what is the future of the LGBTQI plus community and your aspirations for the new and upcoming India?
You want to go first?
I'm happy to go first. I think, we're at a very exciting time for equal rights in the country today, right? I think it's a particularly challenging time, but it's also a time that allows for unique, innovative, creative ways for making a difference. And I think just seeing the amount of young people who are coming out is so heartening. I was in my own school a couple of months ago and speaking about LGBTQ plus rights, and out of the 4 panelists who were invited to this conference at school, 3 were queer, right? Which is unimaginable, to me as someone who studied at that school not too long ago and who couldn't come out of the closet, right? And I think the inability of all the powers that be to constrain queerness, to sort of prevent queerness from flowering, is something that's inspirational but also so exciting. And I can't wait for all the amazing people who are going to take over and make a difference and chart inspiring, incredible stories to come, like Rohin, who is fighting.
You just called me young.
Yeah.
We're barely a year apart.
Arey, but chalo na. But you focus on the inspiring and
Okay, fine.
incredible.
If you insist.
Charting
Anish
these
is
paths
the old
forward.
guard, I'm the new guard.
I really am not the old guard. Please, I'm no guard. But yes, so I think exciting things to come, and I think they're going to be challenging times,
Yeah.
but times that will allow for joy and dancing and
Happiness.
and hopefully a peck on the lips at Trey at Lodi.
After
So
You're manifesting it right now.
I'm manifesting. What about you, Rohan?
I'm not the optimist. I think before things get better, things will get worse, right? For every school that there are queer people being able to come out safely, there are queer kids who are being forced into suicide, right? We had something like this in DPS
Yeah.
in Delhi. For every bit of dancing and joy, There are still queer people outside the NAC offices who protesting because they don't have access to life-saving medication, right? For every Pride parade that we see, there's an Ananya Kumari Alex who dies without medical aid. So, but at the same time, of course, as you said, we are at a point where things don't look as bleak. I wouldn't say things look bright. Things don't look as bleak in the future. But yes, I guess, wait, I want to read out this passage from my phone. And so as we go into the future, I want to read out this favorite passage from my book, from my favorite book. It's called Faggots and Their Friends Between Revolutions. And it goes something like this. The strong women told faggots that there are two important things to remember about the coming revolutions. The first is that we will get our asses kicked. The second, that we will win. The faggots knew the first. Faggot ass kicking is a time-honored sport of men. But the faggots did not know about the second. They had never thought about winning before. They did not even know what winning meant. So they asked the strong women, and the strong women said that winning was like surviving, only better. As the strong women explained winning, the faggots were surprised and then excited. The faggots knew about surviving, for they always had, and this was to be just plain better. That make ass kicking different. Getting your ass kicked and then winning elevated the entire enterprise of making revolution. So I think we are at a point where we're getting our asses kicked.
But then
there is going to
But
be
then
a
we win.
revolution,
Then we
and
win.
that is going to be better than us merely surviving.
Correct.
that was wonderful, and I think that was also an amazing end to this podcast. Thank you so much, guys, for coming and
Thank you for
making
having
such
us.
a fun conversation.
Thank you for having us, Hansika. Looking forward
Yes.
to all the inspiring guests who will follow
And
on
proceed.
and
Aryan.
proceed. Oh, and Aryan, yes, correct.
Okay.
But lovely. Thank you so much for having us,
so much.
Hansika.
for having
Thank you.
us.
Thank you, guys.